all over the world is exactly what they aim and hope to do: shock, awe, and prove a point to their adversary, that look, this is what we can do inside your own home and home space. I think that has been a mistake, because this is something, for one,
There's a bit of a
I think the entire nation, and from the
sir.
what is coming out of the TV, unlike us this time. So I'm saying, my point is, the response has to be a comprehensive use of national power. Every element. It cannot be a one-off kinetic option, because it's past that stage. However, what will matter is what was brought out, I think, by a couple of the speakers, and very aptly, and that is something which is the Indian military has always done. That response will be cool, calm, collected, measured, well thought of, but in an integrated manner with all other elements of comprehensive national power. It will need a clear, worked out strategy, and it will be over a period of time, and it will not be a short-term response. And I think that is what our leadership is doing right now.
So, the reportage, the general imagination and narrative of defense of India is generally army-centric. Of late, there are stories of the people from Air Force. Very few stories, come out of Navy, in terms of their contribution to India's defense. The one film made on the submarine that was sunk by the Indian Navy during 1971 war. I think that's the last I saw of, in context of the larger role of the Navy in the popular movie, journalistic, literary narrative. So can you just take us through what are the naval options which can be less than the threshold of a full-scale war? If I have to simply put it to my viewers, and placing Navy in context of India's defense, deterrent and deterrence.
Is that addressed to me?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for the question. The first thing I'd point out is that the Navy is aptly called the silent service, because any Navy in the world, because the minute it sails out more than 3 or 4 nautical miles from shore, nobody knows, nobody can see what's going on. While a lot is indeed going on at sea, and as you know, for the prosperity of any country, the maritime sphere is of the peace and tranquility is of utmost importance. So I think that is what essentially is the unseen job of the Navy: maintaining the 80% or 90% of the trade, keeping our sea lanes open, ensuring that the entire coastal communities are safe, and keeping a strong deterrent posture, so that the war at sea cannot be escalated or thought of by the other person. Now, as far as options from the Navy are concerned, there are a number of options now. Having been in a position where I know these options, obviously, these are something that you cannot really talk about in public, or should not talk about in public. So, because that is something that is, something that needs to be kept at a very, very confidential level. So I don't think that's apt to discuss. But what I would rather bring out is that, we should not despair at this time. I always see a lot of elements. We are winning this entire war with Pakistan. We are winning it comprehensively. You look at the economic situation that India has. You look at the diplomatic situation that we have. You look at the armed forces strength that we have. You look at the fact that Kashmir has been integrated back with India after Article 370 was abrogated. The world today has changed its view about Kashmir. You look at the images that you are showing across India and across Kashmir about the public reprehension or opposition to the attacks that were carried out within Kashmir the first time the Bandh was called. So we are winning this war comprehensively. And Pakistan, as I mentioned in the beginning, is acting in desperation. So while from the coming back to your specific point about the Navy is concerned, there are a number of options that can be exercised, but I would not really like to identify any specific option, because that's not correct. It sort of firstly is incorrect procedure. Secondly, it's not something that should be done. Suffice it to say that the
Okay.
options at sea, if exercised, will have a disastrous impact further on Pakistan
Okay.
if they are exercised.
Okay.
So I think that is something which the decision maker will do. But I think we need to remember that we are winning this war. These are small battles, and irritants, small for in the larger picture, very bad for the people who are there. The people who have lost their loved ones. For them, it's a life that has been lost. The entire lives have changed. So not belittling that enormous loss, but India is has the upper hand, and we need to maintain that, as I mentioned, by having a very deliberate, and as all the panelists have mentioned, a comprehensive approach, well thought out, cool, calm, collected. We will strike when we want to strike, how we want to strike, and what we want to do.
Let me straight away go to Commodore Uday Bhaskar sir. Are we winning the war? And your comments on Pakistan's low nuclear threshold, sir.
Pakistan's nuclear threshold is an empirical fact, meaning that India and Pakistan both are nuclear armed and they are neighbors. And in the 1999 Kargil War, this was amply demonstrated that while Pakistan tended to be reckless in waving the nuclear sword, India acted with great restraint, and this in turn paid rich dividends to India in the politico diplomatic sphere. Now, the nuclear card is always bandied, and this has been gamed many times as to when and how will the escalation take place. My limited response at this point is that I think we should acknowledge the fact that when I said India's response, any military response will not be cost free, one was pointing to the fact that in the event, hypothetically, if India carries out a strike, there is a Pakistani response, India then decides that it will increase the ante, as it were, and open a conventional front, then we are going up a couple of steps on the ladder. Where does the ladder peak? The possibility that Pakistan will use in the past, there's been reference to tactical nuclear weapons, a phrase that I do not personally like because there is nothing tactical about using a nuclear weapon.
Absolutely.
Now, that is the kind of apocalyptic scenario that I personally, as an analyst, would say one has to even allow it to enter the discourse in a very measured manner. Will Pakistan use its nuclear weapons? Now, there is a lot of speculation that at the end of the day, they will not take such a step because they know that the Indian response would be of an order that would cause extreme damage almost to the point of erasure. Do we want to go down that path? Any sane, prudent kind of voice would say negative. And more importantly, the international community is not going to be sitting and allowing two nuclear armed neighbors to go down the path, just as India raised its voice, if you remember, in the Ukraine war. Yes. Whenever there was a reference to the possibility that Moscow might introduce a nuclear dimension, in his own way, Prime Minister Modi was able to reach out and make the same point that will be made to India and Pakistan, that this is not an option that should be considered. So I personally, at this whole day, this morning, I've seen a lot of rhetoric which seems to suggest that this is a path that India can pay the price. I would say that is feckless. So while we recognize that there is a nuclear dimension, I think India's decision makers are mature. They will make the appropriate call knowing fully well, I repeat this point, this is not cost free. There are reports that Pakistan has already got its entire military on alert. And I make this point again emphatically, Kartikeya, that there are other options. We have political options, economic options, financial options. If you remember the last time around when India was able to get global support for the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, Pakistan paid a very heavy price. So I think there are other ways of ensuring compliance through compellence, and that compellence need not necessarily be nuclear. That's my limited point.
I think that's an important point. Major General Chakravarti, do you think that the non-military options or the other options other than military, can create high compliance levels?
Well, I'll be very candid. After having served a large portion of my life exactly in the areas where things have happened, and having known Pakistan a little too well, I do not think that the options of the FATF, which I have been writing in great detail, or any other options have anything to do with the Pakistani military mindset. Let me be very calibrated in my talk. Having handled the entire not ceasefire, having handled the artillery firing for years, against Pakistan. This is not a country which follows any such rules. I was in Jammu only a month back. Let me tell you frankly, I was quite surprised that we have possibly taken Pakistan to be a sane state. Let me just say it in very humble terms. We can't afford to just do something, that only we are by doing FATF or getting the United States or China to speak to them. Nothing is going to happen. We have to do something. I don't want to lay out the options, as I think both Air Marshal, Admiral, as well as General Sudhakar has very correctly, as well as Commodore has said. But there are many military options. The military can't be out of this. I'm sorry to say so. The military has to come back. I've served in Kashmir and I know how the military has to serve. From a doctor to everybody has to be on his toes. And this, you cannot take the state of Kashmir that you open a movie hall and you feel that one movie has started, then you can accept that Pakistan is going to take it lying down. Believe me, an ant can get into an elephant's ear and cause enough pain. Now, having such a big area which extends right from the Chenab up to Dem Chowk, and knowing every millimeter of it because I had to fire rounds correctly, because we are all talking very big. I had small weapons which kept going, and belonging to the artillery, I had to make sure that while this was on, it was calibrated. And if required, the Air Force came in. If required, the Navy came in. I'm repeating it today. If required, we use surveillance of very different nature. But to think that just FATF, because I've been writing about FATF, I can assure you these have no impact on the Pakistani military mindset. Pakistan is not controlled from Islamabad. Often in my presentation, the first target was GHQ at Rawalpindi. Is Rawalpindi which says the orders, and particularly with regard to India, with regard to Kashmir. I mean, say, I don't have to say it to you, no, you don't know to hear the Pakistan Army chief. I'm myself telling you after deep analysis, having dealt with situations which are not supposed to be discussed over here, nor we should talk about it, and nor we should be emotional. There is no other way in dealing with this military mindset but giving a military response. Now you can decide, and it has to be everybody in. Obviously, it can't be today just somebody going in from the army or the navy it has to be a whole of government approach. That I agree with you. Whole of government approach which is calibrated, an approach which sends a message to the Pakistan army. I'm repeating again, which controls the shots, which is responsible for even selecting a target like Pahalgam. I was in Jammu, and at that time the Samba operation was on. But believe me, having served as a general over there, I didn't get the feeling of what Kashmir should really look like, or I'd say what Jammu J&K should look like. I know, having served over there, how it was and what was the convoys and how it moved. There happened, we have to get back to what we were. At least General Sudhakar and Air Marshal and all would realize. I remember even today, these are some incidents are not reported. There are many things which happen between Avantipur and 92 BH in Srinagar. I can't bring out all these things, but I want to tell you that please don't have this sweet approach to this great nation, Pakistan. When they cause all these things, they are very calculated, they are very strategic. I'm not by any means wanting to be a warmonger, but definitely I would say a military response is necessary for the military. You cannot deal with them through FATF, through IMF. These are all sweet, soft organizations. They have no impact on the military mind. And I
Basically,
myself I'm not a,
no,
do not belong to a.
basically you are saying that if you need to change the behavior of the Pakistani state, you need to change the behavior of the Pakistani army. This question is for General Sudhakarji. It's ultimately need to change the behavior of the Pakistani army for it to reflect on the Pakistani state. If I have to take forward your argument.
Absolutely. I tend to agree with General Chakravarti's articulations and bang on. I have also been since past couple of years have been saying the same thing. I've just carried out a research of 40 days, and my research gives a finding that this proxy war from Pakistan will never come to an end. It's an eternal flood being flooded from Rawalpindi or ISI sitting in Islamabad. So until you close the tap, how do you expect the water which is flooding your drawing room or the mainland? How do you expect that to be drained out? So you got to address the target which is responsible to actually orchestrate such kind of mayhem and genocide, I would say. So second point, if you allow me, Kartikeya, it's very important. It's a very interesting discussion taking place. Any conflict, any action taken by us, we should be very clear about the exit policy. We must know how to terminate the conflict or how to terminate the punishment that we wish to unleash against the enemy. Because if that is not clear, then we may land up like what is Putin is landed up now, Putin and Zelensky. Because they all planned for 7 days or 15 days, but Putin didn't know how to actually pull out of the conflict. Same in the case with Netanyahu. Netanyahu's objectives are
Okay.
different.
Okay. To our viewers, very soon this press conference is going to start by Ministry of External Affairs. I'm very happy that Ambassador Sikri, Veena Sikri joins me. Madam, we were talking about the military options. My question to you is, are non-military options as effective as military options?
Of course, I think it always has to be a combination of military and non-military options. The military option, as it's quite correctly been said, there is always a very significant importance attached to the exit policy. You have to be clear, it should not be another IPKF or something like that. That option is always a big worry. But a combination of military and non-military. Diplomatic option is also very strong. We have never exerted globally and significantly on this what Pakistan is the kind of terrorist and terrorism attacks they launch in India. What about what the problem of Balochistan? The people of Balochistan don't want to be with them. The people of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa don't want to be with them. There are a huge lot of situations that Pakistan finds itself in, but still it manages through various diplomatic channels to always make itself indispensable. And you found even in August of last year, Pakistan was a channel through which the regime change operation in Bangladesh was conducted. So, I mean, it just shows how the diplomatic option and making yourself indispensable to the world community is what Pakistan has been exercising. Whether it is the game in Afghanistan, whether it is, making themselves useful for the regime change in Bangladesh, always something like that they always pull off so that their view in the world remains unchanged. But we have to combine the military and the non-military options. I think the trade option is a very important one. The question of commodities. There was an option, for example, that any company that is doing business in say POK or located there will not be allowed to do business with India. There's so many options that one can combine with, but also from
Asking
our
this question,
side,
Ambassador
intelligence
Sikri,
operation.
the reason why I'm
Yes.
asking this question to you is, if you recall, the Prime Minister said कि झेलम में खून और पानी साथ साथ नहीं बह सकता. And then the Prime Minister in the context of the Ukraine had very specifically said, it's not the time for war. In this larger rubric of our positioning in international politics, war in Ukraine, the global tension, and his stand when he said, खून और पानी साथ साथ नहीं बह सकता, where do we stand today?
Well, I think, as I said, the Indus Waters Treaty itself is one very big non-military option. Abrogation of the treaty itself, all these decades, we've given to Pakistan much more water than what they were required to get under the Indus Waters Treaty, because we didn't exercise our own options under the Indus Waters Treaty. We didn't exercise them properly, and we were always giving in to, what you call arbitration, and they would raise an objection even to run-of-the-river projects where they have no right to raise objection. They would raise objection, and we would give in to it and submit to those objections. It has been actually a very, in many previous governments, a very weak-kneed approach. So Indus Waters Treaty itself is one of the biggest non-military options that we have to look at and work at. And I think that this combination, I'm sure, is what our government must be considering now and working on. And it has to be that the military option has to be kept alive, because Pakistan is using that option all the time. I mean, ever since 1989, their what they call War of 1,000 Cuts, using the terrorist option, has been terrible. It has been terrible for India. When I was in Bangladesh, every Pakistani terrorist attack in India had a Bangladeshi footprint because they were using Bangladesh for launching the terrorist attacks in India. And they're planning to do that again now because they're getting closer with Bangladesh. So we can never entirely give up the military option. We can never give up the military wariness and, manning our borders and making sure that we have the capacity to retaliate and even to launch attacks. We've seen our surgical strike. We've seen what we did in Balakot. It's not that we don't have the capability. It's a question of planning it and doing it at the right time. And I think that we have to have this combination. I think we're going to see some announcements coming in now with the CCS meeting still going on. But I think that the demand of the people of India is for retaliation, for not keeping quiet. The demand is completely that. I've seen so many, the whole of today, the letters, the impassioned appeals saying that we just cannot, let this situation go as it is. This demand is very much there. So we as a nation have to put our heads together and come up with this combination of military and non-military operations. I think water is a very important operation. The Indus Waters Treaty is something we just have not used all these years. And we have to start using it now, combined with a lot of other, significant options which are military and non-military.
Okay, let me play out a couple of reactions that have come, including Rajnath Singh, Defence Minister.
आते हुए आतंकवादियों द्वारा किए गए कायरतापूर्ण हमले में हमारे देश ने अनेक निर्दोष नागरिकों को खोया है। इस घोर अमानवीय कृत्य से हम सभी गहरे शोक और दर्द में हैं। सबसे पहले मैं उन सभी परिवारों के प्रति अपनी गहरी संवेदना व्यक्त करता हूं जिन्होंने अपने प्रियजनों को खोया है। इस दुखद समय में दिवंगत आत्माओं की शांति के लिए मैं परमात्मा से प्रार्थना करता हूं। यहां मैं भारत के दृढ़ संकल्प को दोहराना चाहूंगा कि टेररिज्म के खिलाफ हमारी जीरो टॉलरेंस की पॉलिसी है। भारत का एक एक नागरिक इस कायरतापूर्ण हरकत के खिलाफ एकजुट है। मैं इस मंच से देशवासियों को आश्वस्त करता हूं, घटना के मद्देनजर भारत सरकार वो हर कदम उठाएगी जो जरूरी और उपयुक्त होगा।
यहाँ हमारा एक गरीब नौजवान मजदूरी करके रोजी रोटी कमाने वाला आदिल घर से निकला था मेहनत की कमाई करने के लिए। बदकिस्मती से आज उनका कफन जो है उनके घर लौटा दिया गया। लेकिन सुनने में आया है कि इनकी मौत ऐसे नहीं हुई। ये बहादुरी का सबूत दिखा रहे थे। वहाँ लोकल सुनने में आया है कि ये एक शख्स थे जिन्होंने हमले को रोकने की कोशिश की और जिन्होंने शायद बंदूक छीनने की भी कोशिश की और तभी जाके इनको निशाना बनाया गया।
बीवी बच्चे लेके अपनी बचत करके यहाँ आता है कि मैं कश्मीर जाके जन्नत को देखूंगा, तो उसके साथ एक निहत्ते टूरिस्ट के साथ जिसके हाथ में तो कोई हथियार नहीं है, इस तरह आप उस पर हमला करते हैं, उसकी जान ले लेते हैं। तो मैं कहती हूँ इसकी जितनी भी मजम्मत की जाए वो कम है। और मैंने पहले भी बोला, फिर से बोलती हूँ कि हम पूरे मुल्क के लोगों से, हम कश्मीरी लोग जो हैं शर्मसार है, शर्मिंदा है कि आप वहां से आए और यहाँ से आप मौत के में चले गए। तो ये इससे बुरा क्या हो सकता है।
Let me go across to Ambassador Veena Sikri. Before I close the show, Madam, in case India decides to exercise the option, multiple head of states have taken India's side. Will India get the same diplomatic leeway, the same buffer which Israel enjoyed when it actioned Gaza? Will we get the same support if we exercise our hard options by these major global powers?
I think so, yes. And in fact, when you mention the Hamas attack on 7th October, there have been a lot of messages today comparing this attack in Pahalgam to the Hamas attack of 7th October. That comparison is being drawn. So obviously, when you see that comparison being drawn, it indicates what the people expect in terms of a response. And I think globally, India is in the correct position to get support. Of course, it all depends what you plan to do, how you put the case. You have to mount a campaign for diplomatic support. It's not that it happens on its own. And I'm sure we've done it many times before. We will do it again. But I think that in our neighborhood, in the importance we attach to our neighborhood and the importance we attach to Indian security, without a response on this issue, it will be terrible. There has to be a very specific, a very strong response.
Okay. Thank you all of you for joining my show. And very soon, there will be a press conference by the Ministry of External Affairs. We'll come to know as to what response India will choose to exercise in the first go. So this is all on point. Don't go away because it's a rolling coverage. Very soon, my colleague Padmata Joshi will join you in India's interest, where this whole issue in its entirety would be again taken up. We will discuss the options which India has and what will be announced subsequently. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Good night. And now let me begin with the meeting which the Prime Minister has undertaken. Yes, I'm talking about the Cabinet Committee on Security. Prime Minister undertook this meeting today. Home Minister Amit Shah, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, other officers, National Security Advisor, Foreign Ministry officials, the Intelligence Bureau Chief, RAW Chief, Foreign Affairs Minister, the top body, the most important body on security, which is Cabinet Committee on Security, met. And very soon, there will be an official press conference by Ministry of External Affairs. But right now, we will talk about India's military and non-military options against Pakistan. 28 people died in this brutal terrorist attack in Pahalgam, a popular tourist destination in Jammu and Kashmir. The suspects have been identified as Asif Sheikh, Suleiman Shah, Abu Talha, all of whom are believed to be the operatives of the Resistance Front, a Lashkar-e-Taiba proxy. Shock and anger grips the nation. New Delhi is weighing its options to send out a strong message to Pakistan. Message will be on multiple fronts: diplomatic, military, economic, even people to people. There are a lot of options on table. In the past, India has given a fitting response to Pakistan-sponsored acts of terror. Let me take you through the Uri attack. 18 September 2016, 4 Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists attacked Indian Army Brigade headquarters near Uri. 19 Indian soldiers were killed and 19 others injured. India's response? On 29 September, India carried out a surgical strike in POK. Commandos crossed LOC at multiple places to attack targets within Pakistani territory. Islamabad reluctantly acknowledges deaths of 2 soldiers and injuries to 9. That was India's first formally acknowledged surgical strike. There have been surgical strikes, but this was a deep surgical strike which took place. Then came Pulwama, 14 February. And I'm only talking about those that have been documented. There have been multiple instances where Indian Army and other special forces must have carried out attacks, but this was officially acknowledged. 14 February 2019, a suicide bomber attacks a convoy of vehicles carrying Indian security personnel on the Jammu-Srinagar National Highway. 40 CRPF personnel died. Jaish-e-Mohammed claims responsibility. This happened on 14th of February. India's response? On 26th, India launches precision airstrike on a Jaish-e-Mohammed training camp at Balakot. That is Balakot. And in that, multiple casualties took place. And Balakot is also important because missile not only landed on the camp of the terrorists, it led to an aerial engagement. It led to an aerial engagement first time after 1971. So, in 16, the army was involved. In 19, the Air Force was involved. So, can India do another surgical strike? The government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi hasn't hesitated to exercise the option in the past. This is something that cannot be ruled out. Given the stellar role played by the Indian Air Force, its efficacy has been proven in the past. It can be exercised to neutralize terror bases inside enemy territory. Can India change the nature of Pakistani state? Pakistani establishment cannot stop obsessing with the two-nation theory. Pakistani army chief said that this very recently triggering anti-Hindu sentiments, trying to change the nature of the Pakistani state may be futile. Then the question comes, how will India tackle Asif Munir? The man who's trying to further create a dog whistle strategy. And a lot of experts are saying that his speech was actually a trigger for this attack. Though his army is beleaguered, multiple attacks are taking place in Balochistan, and Pakistani army is pinned down even in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Munir recently termed Kashmir as Pakistan's jugular vein, and as said, is being seen as a possible trigger for the Pulwama, for the Pahalgam attack. How can India send out a strong message to the Islamist general? On this, I am joined by Air Marshal Dipendu Chaudhary, former Commandant of India National Defence College, Vice Admiral Anil K. Chawla, former Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Southern Naval Command, Major General P.K. Chakravarti, Deputy Director General, Perspective Planning and Directorate, Additional Director General, Artillery, Army Headquarters, retired, and Commodore C. Uday Bhaskar, Director, Society for Policy Studies and former Director of IDSA, and Major General Sudhakarji, Defence Strategy and expert on various issues related to security. Let me straight away go to Air Marshal Dipendu Chaudhary. Sir, what are India's options?
Thank you very much for having me over on this. And this is I think a time which has kept recurring periodically with different time intervals and periodicity, and has come to haunt us again. And I'm afraid, I think this time they have crossed the lines in the past, but I think they've crossed the line in a manner where I think they have bitten off more than they can chew. And the circumstances they have carried out this attack was possibly to, things were falling in place in Kashmir. There was tourism, life was coming back, absolutely had come back to normalcy. Look at the amount of tourists that we had there. But that was possibly taking away the attention from Kashmir, and from the way the Pakistanis wanted to narrow it down, and from what General Munir's statements and came out, it was absolutely clear that there was obviously appears to be a well-planned strategy. And if it hasn't been a planned strategy and General Munir's statements were delinked from this, then I'm afraid as a general, he's made a serious strategic mistake. And because this is going to have unintended consequences if he was not a party to it, which I strongly suspect is not true. It's very, we know the Pakistani security establishment and their engagement of the military and the ISI. So I'm sure India's options, we have plenty. We have run these options in the past. You already mentioned Balakot strike. And what is interesting is that the Indian Air Force had carried out this attack inside Pakistani territory in each time. And when this attack was carried out, there was no aerial response. This attack went through clean. And that speaks volumes for our military capability. So there are plenty of military options, and I'm sure the people in the right places are going through them. And I think I'll close now and give
Okay.
others a fair chance.
Thank you. You stay with me, sir. Admiral Chawla, there was an element of surprise when 2016 operation happened. There was a bigger element of surprise when 2019 happened. What is the element of surprise now?
The terrorists can be lucky, need to be lucky once. The security forces have to be lucky every time. So that's the first thing. Secondly, this actually represents the bankruptcy of Pakistan's policy and ideas, because this is the only thing that they are left to resort with. This inhuman barbarism that they have demonstrated against innocent civilians, and the way in which they have carried out is, as the Prime Minister mentioned, the most heinous crime that anybody can commit. And Pakistan does it for two reasons. One is when it is ignored, it has been ignored. And second is when it wants to draw attention back to J&K. And obviously there was an element of international visits going on in India, which everybody's talked about. Now, as far as the response is concerned, I think what many people have said, and I agree with that, is firstly, it should be calm and measured. We need not, get amidst the sorrow. We should not let reason be overtaken. We should be very calm in our response and measured in a response. And we need to think through whatever we are going to do. Definitely something will happen. What needs to happen, whether it's a kinetic option or a non-kinetic option or a combination of these two options, will obviously depend on the decision makers of the day. What needs to be done is to ensure that the bankruptcy that Pakistan is facing in its ideas continues. The bankruptcy is in its futile attempts to, get back Kashmir, which is firmly with India, apart from some fringe element. The second part is that they themselves, as you mentioned, are facing a huge amount of backlash in Balochistan and in Fatah and with the Afghanistan.
Okay.
On the Afghanistan border in particular. So their jugular vein is being cut from all sides. The jugular vein is actually their problem, not our problem. So
Okay.
while condemning and sympathizing with all the poor people who have died, I think we have a lot of options. Obviously, these options, the kinetic options, are something that can neither be discussed nor will we really know, and nor should we know what these options will be. But we should exercise all these options, kinetic and non-kinetic,
Okay.
at a time and place of a choosing, with an absolutely calm mind and ensuring long-term impact of these options.
Okay. Major General Chakravarti, the issue is what leverage does India has on Pakistan? We don't have an economic leverage, sir. I don't think there's a human to human relationship leverage. I don't think it exists today. The sort of people to people conversations. There is no diplomatic leverage. What leverage do we have? How do we leverage Indian power to reset the relation?
Well, we have a very strong armed forces, which I do agree with you that diplomacy is practically there's no dialogue which is going on constantly between India and Pakistan. I agree with you as far as diplomacy is concerned. Well, both the embassies still exist. I do not know what they are really doing, but definitely we have a lot of leverage. My goodness, whatever we want to do, our armed forces are, that's, I can only say they are very strong. I can give out the options are plenty with us, plenty. Air Marshal spoke about the air option. I can speak of number of other options. I can speak of I don't want to say the weapons which we have got. They can reach. You don't need not. You can carry out a strike with your ground forces, and you can use your own drones also to great effect. So options available with India are plenty. It's just a question of taking the right decision, deciding on which are the. See, we are well aware of what are you've got two lines of these terrorist bases. One is a line which is quite close to the line of control, and the other is in depth. Both can be tackled. Now, which one you want to tackle and in what sense, and that is what is possibly taking time. And definitely, I would say, please, for heaven's sake, there is a word known as military diplomacy. So leverage just doesn't come in by purely, what you call people who are, shall we say, directly in the foreign missions. the foreign missions also have a defense attaché, having been one. And we are capable of suitably, shall we say, having been in Kashmir. There is, I'm saying, even the ceasefire is going on. I do remember when the ceasefire was not there, there were occasions when Pakistan used to request us if you could please stop shelling. So we are a very powerful country, but we follow the rules. We are a democracy. We can't make a speech like the Chief of Army Staff has made. We have to confine ourselves, as
Okay.
Admiral has correctly said, with a calm attitude. We have to be very patient. We've got to be very moderate in what we do, even as soldiers on the line of control.
Okay.
Otherwise, options available, you give the armed forces a free hand. I can assure you there are plenty of options, and look, I wouldn't like to table them over here. Just
Okay.
I would like to see this,
Okay.
having been actually involved.
Okay, Commodore Bhaskar, the world in last 1 year has seen the Israeli response in Gaza, the October attack that took place. Do such options exist for India? One, are they comparable to? And secondly, where do we place our deterrence, hard deterrence?
Kartikeya, number one, India does have options, and they could be comparable or similar to what Israel has exercised or chosen to pursue in relation to the Hamas attack of October 2023. That having been said, the context Israel, Hamas, Palestine, Gaza is very different from what obtains as far as India, Pakistan, and the specific Pahalgam attack is concerned. You've been raising this question, does India have options, particularly military options? As my panelists have already pointed out, affirmative, yes, India does have military options. We had the example of Balakot.
Yes.
But I think your observation is also very valid. The surprise element.
Yes.
What India achieved in 2016 and 2019, in my reading, perhaps that surprise element does not exist in 2025. So my reading is that while India can exercise a swift military response, it will not be cost-free. And I want to repeat something that is often said in relation to war and politics, that any military initiative, particularly a war, must have a larger political objective. In this case, I think for the Modi government, that is the complex challenge that I believe the CCS must be deliberating on just now, which is that, yes, there is a strong domestic political compulsion for Mr. Modi, now in his third term, to come across as a leader who can do what he had promised to do, if you remember, घुस के मारेंगे, if you remember the aftermath of Balakot. But as an analyst, I'd like to raise this point in this forum. Was Balakot able to prevent Pahalgam? The answer is no. So I think we have to look at this at two levels in terms of objectives. What is the immediate political objective? India must respond in a resolute manner. That is the popular sentiment, and domestic politics would suggest that this indeed must be done. But that again, I think, must be tailored about what is it that the Modi government wishes to convey. If it is resolved, yes, India can use its trans-border military capabilities. There are a range of them. I think my panelists, both Marshal Chaudhary and the others, have identified the options on the table. Not all of them can be discussed. But are they cost-free? I repeat this point, no. And since you raised Israel, let me make this point that not only Israel in October 2023, President Bush in September 2001, 9/11, embarked on an immediate military response in relation to Afghanistan in 2001. But after a very long, expensive war of 20 years, the Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan. So my short point is that one is the immediate tactical response. India can do many things, but they will not be cost-free. There is the possibility of escalation. The long-term challenge for India is abiding the ideology of terrorism that currently animates Kashmir. That would need an all of government, and I think we also have to do our own internal review and accept that there were lapses, which is why Pahalgam happened. And I think that internal review about intelligence lapses, I've raised this every time I come to a television studio, that I don't think we are being honest to ourselves about why are these lapses occurring. We have a very, very competent domestic intelligence agency. We have a very competent external agency in the IB and the RAW. We have a large security presence that comprises the military and the central police forces. So I think some tough questions need to be asked before we embark on the military option. Kartikeya?
Okay. Major General Sudhakar ji, since this Israeli issue was raised, when I used to ask this question during the deep Gaza incursions that were taking place, has Israel been able to change the behavior of Hamas and Hezbollah? A lot of officers, their former officers, now part of the propaganda division, working as journalists, they would always say, sometimes we have to mow the lawn, and we have to mow the lawn time to time, which means that we may not be able to change the behavior of Hamas and Hezbollah, but we need to take care of the cadres and the current leadership in one go. What is that we have not been able to change the behavior of the Pakistani state, that these terror attacks occur in cycles?
Kartikeya, good evening. Thank you for getting me to the show. I hope I am audible because the audio wasn't coming clear to me from the studio. My very deep regards to the very distinguished and senior panelists. Very humbled to be a member of this panel discussion. Very important question you have asked. Any step that India takes in response to this terrorist attack should have the potential to resolve the issue. Will it resolve the issue? Has Balakot, because I couldn't hear Commodore Uday Bhaskar's articulations, his audio was getting disturbed. Has any of the activity or response that India has resorted to, has it ever been, has it ever acted as a deterrence? The answer is no. So is the case with Israel. They have reconciled to possible doctrine, as per my limited understanding. If you would take your mind back to 1997, Netanyahu himself was a member. The Congress members also were there in the committee. And if I recall the nomenclature, it is to be called as clean break. Clean break, it's about Palestine. At that point in time in 97, they had decided that there is no place for Palestine in Middle East. So it has got correlation. What I am saying is that as long as the Hamas, the Hezbollah, the octopus doctrine that Israel has reconciled and adopted, octopus doctrine means that the octopus head is Iran, and all the tentacles, be it Houthis and Hezbollahs and Hamas, and there is a fourth one, they are the tentacles. They are prepared to apply the doctrine of mow the grass or mow the lawn that you're talking every 6 to 9 months. They also have reconciled to the fact that they cannot do away with, they have to live with these terrorists. They also are reconciled with the fact that Israel, whether they accept it openly or not, it is a satellite post of USA. They will continue to be supported by USA always and every time, in times of crisis or otherwise. They also know the fact that their eternal adversary is Iran. This will continue. Okay. So therefore it brings me, if I have to draw parallel and bring some correlation to this particular incident or terrorist attack that has taken place, I totally agree with all the very senior esteemed co-panelists that India needs to think through. It needs to actually adopt a course of action in a sustained manner. It's not like Balakot and in one day it is over. It has to be a combination of kinetic and non-kinetic means. It has to be a combination of standoff as also a contiguous kind of an activity. Pakistan has to be subjected to continuous punishment over a period of time, and that is the form, new kind of a form of mowing the grass as far as India is concerned in relation to Pakistan. It has to adopt multiple forms of economic, be it river water, be it political, and now the target selection is very important, Kartikeya. Okay. So I'm saying if the ceasefire violation is not being respected, a ceasefire agreement 2021, why don't we make it conditional? Why don't we, instead of adopting covert attack, openly declare that one civilian getting killed, India is not going to spare you openly. Like Israel does, like USA does. We'll get into Pakistan, we'll select our target, we'll eliminate them, not neutralize, eliminate them.
Very quickly now, Ambassador Veena Sikri has joined me. Ambassador Veena Sikri will join me in few minutes, but there are two issues I'll take up. One is the issue of the nuclear threshold, because Pakistan is a nuclear state. Gaza is not a nuclear state, one. And second, the issue of troubled neighborhood, a sort of a volatile Myanmar border, a hostile government in Dhaka, not so hostile government in Nepal, but we don't know where to place them, hostile Pakistan, and a border where additional deployment has taken place, huge deployment has taken place, training Indian Army, and that is the China border. So my question to Air Marshal Dipendu Chaudhary, sir, keeping this in context, the sort of deployment we have on the border, and many experts have written on two-front war, two-front issues, what options do we exercise? And lastly, if you can just answer this, a lot of experts say that this nuclear threshold of Pakistan being considered low is a bluff which it exercises in strategic affairs. Do you agree or disagree?
Thank you. It's a pretty interesting question, because at the end of the day, we need to bear in mind, like it was absolutely clearly brought out, that it is not just it's not a Gaza that we are handling. It is a nuclear state, and in fact, this India, unfortunately, its position is the nuclear hotspot of the world, which is world on its toes and keeps it worried. And Pakistan has constantly leveraged this nuclear bogey to its advantage. But at the end of the day, India has always shown enormous strategic restraint, and every action has been measured, escalation controlled, and well thought of. Even in this case, the mistake, I think, which has been made, the last time when it had struck the CRPF, basically the CAPF, uniformed personnel. But this time you have gone on and hit pure civilians in front of the family. I didn't mean go into the details, but the level of the action taken by the terrorists is a classic terrorist action, which historically all over the world is exactly what they aim and hope to do. Shock, awe, and prove a point to their adversary, that look, this is what we can do inside your own home space. I think that has been a mistake, because this is something for one.
There's a bit of a.
I think the entire nation, and from what is coming out of the TV, unlike past this time. So I'm saying my point is the response has to be a comprehensive use of national power. Every element. It cannot be a one-off kinetic option, because it's past that stage. However, what will matter is what was brought out, I think, by a couple of the speakers, and very aptly, and that is something which is the Indian military has always done. That response will be cool, calm, collected, measured, well thought of, but in an integrated manner with all other elements of comprehensive national power. It will need a clear, worked out strategy, and it will be over a period of time, and it not be a short-term response. And I think that is what our leadership is doing right now.
So, the reportage, the general imagination and narrative of defense of India is generally army-centric. Of late, there are stories of the people from Air Force. Very few stories, come out of Navy, in terms of their contribution to India's defense. One film made on the submarine that was sunk by the Indian Navy during 1971 war. I think that's the last I saw of, in context of the larger role of the Navy in the popular movie, journalistic, literary narrative. So can you just take us through what are the naval options which can be less than the threshold of a full-scale war? If I have to simply put it to my viewers, and placing Navy in context of India's defense, deterrent and deterrence.
Is that addressed to me?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. The first thing I'd point out is that the Navy is aptly called the silent service because any Navy in the world, because the minute it sails out more than, 3 or 4 nautical miles from shore, nobody knows, nobody can see what's going on. While a lot is indeed going on at sea. And as you know, for the prosperity of any country, the maritime sphere is of the peace and tranquility is of utmost importance. So I think that is what essentially is the unseen job of the Navy, maintaining the 80% or 90% of the trade, keeping our sea lanes open, ensuring that the entire coastal communities are safe, and keeping a strong deterrent posture so that the war at sea cannot be escalated or thought of by the other person. Now, as far as options from the Navy are concerned, there are a number of options. Now, having been in a position where I know these options, obviously, these are something that you cannot really talk about in public or should not talk about in public. So, because that is something that is, something that needs to be kept at a very, very confidential level. So I don't think that's apt to discuss. But what I would rather bring out is that, we should not despair at this time. I always see a lot of elements. We are winning this entire war with Pakistan. We are winning it comprehensively. You look at the economic situation that India has. You look at the diplomatic situation that we have. You look at the armed forces strength that we have. You look at the fact that Kashmir has been integrated back with India after Article 370 was abrogated. The world today has changed its view about Kashmir. You look at the images that you are showing across India and across Kashmir about the public reprehension or opposition to the attacks that were carried out within Kashmir the first time the Band was called. So we are winning this war comprehensively. And Pakistan, as I mentioned in the beginning, is acting in desperation. So while from the coming back to a specific point about the Navy is concerned, there are a number of options that can be exercised, but I would not really like to identify any specific option because that's not correct. It sort of firstly is incorrect procedure. Secondly, it's not something that should be done. Suffice it to say that the
Okay.
options at sea, if exercised, will have a disastrous impact further on Pakistan.
Okay.
If they are exercised.
Okay.
So I think that is something which the decision maker will do. But I think we need to remember that we are winning this war. These are small battles and irritants, small for in the larger picture, very bad for the people who are there. The people who have lost their loved ones. For them, it's a life that has been lost. The entire lives have changed. So not belittling that enormous loss, but India has the upper hand, and we need to maintain that, as I mentioned, by having a very deliberate and, as all the panelists have mentioned, a comprehensive approach, well thought out, cool, calm, collected. We will strike when we want to strike, how we want to strike, and what we want to do.
Let me straight away go to Commodore Uday Bhaskar sir. Are we winning the war? And your comments on Pakistan's low nuclear threshold, sir.